Welcome to the Hello FirstName podcast. The Hello FirstName podcast revolves around the term personalization and is brought to you by marketing author Rasmus Holy, founder of Omnichannel Institute and Chief Experience Officer at the marketing automation software company Agilic. The podcast is based on the book Hello FirstName. Each episode is based in turn on a chapter from the book, followed by a discussion of the very same chapter with an expert marketing practitioner in the following episode. As always, you can buy the book on Amazon or other bookstores. You can also choose to listen to it all for free on your favorite podcast service. You're also very welcome to download the abstract of the book for free, and all models, of course, are able to download. All downloads are sponsored by Agilic. I'll make sure to put a link to everything in the show notes. But you can always connect on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to reply and help out. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Hello FirstName podcast. Today we're going to discuss chapter 18 from the book Hello FirstName. The chapter is called Models of Organizational Maturity in Personalization. So we're getting to some of the bit heavier topics here. So I needed to bring in a heavyweight champion within the field. And that's why I'm particularly happy to see you, Frans Riemersma, on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And it was so great to contribute to the book. Loved it.
Yeah, because you're actually the co-author of the book. So it says your name here, if I'm pointing correctly, Frans Riemersma. And a great contribution. I did believe that, first of all, you know much more about the whole Martech and Marketing Ops than I actually do. And it would also maybe be a bit incredible or uncredible to have. So I am working for a vendor. So I believe that it was nice with an outside perspective on this. And also, I think the work that you're doing, you're really killing it out there with the work that you're doing with the Martech Tribe, your own company. All the interesting studies that you're doing, and not to mention the whole Martech map that you're doing with Scott Brinker from ChiefMartec. So that's just me giving you a lot of praise, but maybe in your own words, Frans, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your career?
Ooh, yeah, we'll try to keep it very short. So originally I'm a marketer, but I started coding, developing because I was a bit unsatisfied with the customer experience that I saw. So I started coding back in the last century, 97, 98, so a long time ago. And I ended up in the twilight zone of IT and marketing and loved it. So I always have been translating what IT wants from marketing, which is clear-cut, briefings and functional designs, and then reverse engineer to marketing. And that's what I've been doing. And I mostly have worked in consultancy, so I worked with a lot of the marketers that felt the pain and marketing ops people, the frustration, supported them. And I also worked for 4 years on the other side, the software side. So I was heading up an R&D team, a consultancy, so to figure out what clients really need, reverse engineer those requirements into goals and marketing goals. That really worked well. And then 5 years ago, I started my own company, which is Martech Tribe. Basically having no real strategy, just figuring out, okay, I want to understand Martech and what makes a great stack. And that is something I've been doing ever since. So I started collecting data. I mean, we're marketers, and if you want to do a proper job, look into your data. So I collect data on stacks. On, of course, the work with Scott Brinker on tools, but also requirements. And we're now exploring that for the last 5 years. And we are now able to say for which industry, what type of Martech you need and what is driving revenue and what is not, even to the requirement level. So I'm geeking out, as you can see.
Yeah, but that's awesome. And also the whole part about collecting data from, also I believe in the book, we're actually using some of the graphs and the stats that you made. So based on real evidence or self-reported, at least evidence on how people's stacks are put together and how they perceive their own maturity, how those things stack up and which systems are normally implemented depending on the self-perceived maturity level of the organizations. I think that's brilliant and probably one of the only data sets like this in the world, perhaps, where you see so many Martech stacks from different vendors, because obviously Salesforce has their overview of their own stacks and Adobe and the others as well. But I guess from an independent side, this is probably quite unique.
That's why we started collecting the stacks. We have now around 1,500 globally, cross industry. And it's self-reported indeed, but we've also tried initially to scrape, websites, and then you'll find like, I think 10% of what we receive on the self-reported stuff, because those are only the ones, the tools with a tag, right? The HubSpots, the Salesforce, but you don't find Trello or Asana, and those are heavily used as well. So, or
The
Tableau.
internal tools.
Yeah. So we have a much richer, so to speak, data set. It is self-reported, also the maturity, but there's funny stuff happening. So if you look at the outperformers in an industry, they report their maturity lower than the low performers. Why? Because they bump their noses and they go like, oh, we are not as smart as we thought we are. So they're more realistic.
They're
and this
conscious
is
about it.
Yeah, it's the cognitive bias stuff from Dunning-Kruger, right? It's nothing else.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's giving some validity to that. Outperformers, by the way, are defined by the revenue per employee ratio. So they're the top 30%. And it's consistent across all industries. The only one exception is professional services. They are relatively in the same place in terms of, but the rest, outperformers are far more realistic. So that is the starting point normally for our analysis.
So maybe that's more fun to look at. It's a better indicator than the self-reported maturity.
Yes.
So tell me, how is my company doing? It's like going to the doctor and then asking the doctor how you feel.
And the beauty is, exactly. And it can be kind of confronting every now and then. But I also see the initially the bold companies are coming up and say, you know what, just hit me, because we have a CFO or CEO who says, Martech is underutilized, but where and why and how? And that's what you want to know. So we create now a 360 view, which is, if you look at the super graphic, there's 6 columns, 49 blocks. So across the 49 blocks, we can tell you where you should do more or less, start doing, stop doing. And then you can see, okay, if I stop doing this, that's my saving, and I reinvest it here. So where to invest, divest is becoming pretty simple now.
Yeah. Wow. Impressive.
It's fun.
All right. We're going to talk about personalization today, but before moving into that, you mentioned the term marketing ops or marketing operations. I think most people that will be listening to this will understand what a Martech stack is, namely all the tools that you put together in order to do all your marketing operations, both internally and externally.
Correct.
But marketing ops, what does that mean? I think at least in the Nordics, it's not a very widely used term. So maybe enlighten me and the listeners to that.
It's not just the Nordics; it's Europe, where we don't use it a lot. So I did a little LinkedIn poll a couple of times on, do you have a marketing ops team? And marketing ops people are tech savvy and business savvy. And they normally sit as a team within marketing. Okay. Now, we asked basically American companies, how often do you have a marketing ops team with a title, a budget, and a mandate? It's 80%, 80. That's a lot. Yeah. In Europe, it was 30, 35. So that's
due to the size of the companies or the complexity, or why is that?
I think we are in Europe more organized across country, because in every country we have different languages, currencies, but also strategies. So we are scattered around. So in the European survey, they said 30% we have that team, 30% more on top said, we have such a team, but it's not called that way. So they still have to do a coming out, I would say.
Yeah. Coming out of the marketing ops closet.
Yeah. And maybe to elaborate a little bit, if you don't know what a market...
So you say it's because that the European large companies in Europe, they're more divisioned. So the French part is just France and the German part is just Germany. And there's less coordination across the different countries. And that means there may not be need. There's probably a need, but they haven't established an HQ function of marketing ops. That's what I'm hearing.
They don't recognize it as a function as such. And maybe very easy to recognize a marketing ops person in the wild. It's very simple. It's the person you go to say, can you give me the admin rights, extra rights, because you are admin? Can you give me a data dump from this database? Those people are normally your marketing ops. But in America, and the United States, the marketing ops people transcend that. It's not only admin, it's also data crunching, and it's also some of the processes, etc.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking about now the squared model that Scott Brinker made for marketing technologists. So this would be the top left corner mostly, where you have the I think they call it the maestros, if I'm remembering correctly. But also transcending a bit into sort of the analytics part of things. So maybe not only delivering the data, but actually coming up with some of the insights that could be used in the more execution side of things.
In the future, and I think that will happen in the next 5 years somewhere, I think marketing ops insights will land on the boardroom table. Because if you do your job properly and you're not just, immersed or flooded by change requests for technology, but you outgrow that, you are able to see really well what is happening, what the client really needs. And there was one very nice definition from Scott Vaughan, former CMO of Integrate, and he said it very nicely. He said, marketing or marketing ops is basically the customer story well told at the boardroom table. I love that one. And that's really, because if you look at that, we're trying to boil the ocean with all the data and all the software, but you don't need that much. You need to understand it. I don't have to tell you with personalization. You know all about it.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today, at least to some extent. But first of all, with your insight into to Martech and marketing ops, how big is personalization in Martech these days?
Simply put, it's the holy grail. This is what all the companies are after. Companies being software vendors and also brands. So we have this database with requirements, 4,500 requirements, and we survey our clients and ask them what is the features and the requirements you like most, use most, or miss most. And it's always around personalization. And all the rest follows, like, unification of data or golden personalization is the holy grail for brands. And also, if you look at, we scrape a lot of the content of the 14,000 software vendors out there in Martech.
Quite a lot.
Personalization scores highest by far. So
still, even with Gen AI being like the super hyped, or is it just considered a part of making the personalization work?
Yes. Gen AI is just a tool, right? It's a method, it's a technique that you can apply, and it's extremely powerful, but it's not doing anything for you. And this is, I think, also a shift that we see, that we think if we buy a personalization tool, it would do the work for us, or Gen AI. No, you still have to write down your prompt. So it's you still.
Have yet to see any personalization that personalizes itself.
That would be
or any marketing automation that automates itself, and it's a common misconception that we just need to, and maybe slightly driven by over enthusiastic vendor salespeople that really maybe give people the impression that if they only sign the license agreement, then suddenly money will fall down from the sky.
That's somebody called it. We implemented a tool, sat back and waited for a miracle to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that's a strategy. But how do you think I know you also have some data on this. How has the and now you say it's a holy grail. How has that changed over the last 10 years, or is it more so the holy grail now, or is it less, or is it?
It's the same over the years, and here Gen AI comes in. I secretly have the hope that Gen AI will help us understand the client better, because only then you can do good personalization. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no insights, no personalization.
And the beauty with Gen AI, actually, I read a nice article some weeks ago in New York Times, and it was talking to the folks of OpenAI, and they said, well, basically, we started Gen AI with the idea of interpreting data. But suddenly it started to talking back and explain, okay, if this is your question and this is what I understand. So it started a conversation and then gave the output. What I read, and there's a lot of tools out there that say chat to your data, talk to your customer database in plain English. And that is what Gen AI initially was built for. And I really hope that will democratize insights into customer database. I teach at business schools.
Yeah.
And many times those people ask me, okay, I need a tool. And I go like, why? Well, then I know my customer. Are you saying you don't know your customer right now? Because then you are in trouble. And so with Gen AI, they always go back into the tools, look into the data, the existing one without buying a new. And then they go like, oh, I didn't know it converts like this. And they want to hear that. And it's not like 10,000 touch points. It's only 2 or 3 that really make a difference. And I think that's personalization at its finest, right?
Yeah, hold that thought because we're getting back to that.
Yes.
First of all, a bit of talk about maturity, because the chapter that we are going to discuss is called Models of Organizational Maturity and Personalization. So before we getting into the whole personalization stuff, let's dwell on the term maturity model maybe first. What is a maturity model for you? What does that mean to you? And why should the CMO or the CIO care about it?
That's a very good question. So let me start with saying I've seen a lot of maturity models and I'm not a fan of them. So I get confused. I go like, okay, where am I? And okay, but I'm 5 here, but I'm 3 there, and then I'm lost. But there's one model that I really like, which is, it has been around for, I think quite some decades, in the 80s, 90s. And it's from Carnegie Mellon University in the States. And it has 5 levels, like a Likert scale. And it starts with your ad hoc, then you're more defining, then you're standardized, and then you're repeatable, and then ultimately optimized. Yeah. Now, all good, sounds fine. What I really like is the concept of you cannot automate stuff or optimize it if you have not standardized it. And you cannot standardize what you haven't defined. Yeah. And that makes so much sense. So I'm working with a client right now on a stack benchmark, and you see they're trying.
For the record, you're talking about the capability maturity model here, right?
Yes, the capability maturity model from. There is originally one, I think, by the U.S. government, and the Carnegie Mellon University took it to a next level, and that next level is now capability maturity integration model called. Okay.
Yeah,
you can look it up in Wikipedia, and then there it is. And we're using that one, so people self-report on that. And for CMOs, it's really a mirror. Like, where are we? And we spoke about it. Outperformers in the market, they tend to think less of themselves because they bump their noses, they learned their lessons. Whereas the newbies go like, that can be difficult. Personalization. Let's do this.
We haven't done that. Probably easy.
What can be difficult? Because you haven't run into problems yet, so it looks great.
So the whole thing about being unconsciously incompetent.
Oh, I love that you're saying that, because that is the thing. So the whole maturity model, the 5 levels, coincides with the hype cycle and the Dunning-Kruger effect, and also what you just said. So the hype cycle has this peak, right? Before that peak, you're unconscious, incompetent. And as CMO, you need to know that. You normally don't. And that's where you have the wrong intuition. Oh, it can't be difficult. Okay, then you hit some bumps and you go like, on the top of the peak, you go like, oh, darn, this is not working. And then you do the wrong analysis. You say, we are unique. Let's customize the hell out of this tool because we're so special. All the best practices, yes. And there you go.
And it drops,
And then at the bottom, that's where they call it the valley of despair. That's where you realize, you know what? Let's switch this tool off. It's not working, and that's the magic moment, because that's where people in your organization go like, oh, hold on, I'm using it for this piece and that one and that one, and those 3. Now you're in a learning curve, and that's where the slope of enlightenment starts. And now you are consciously competent. And then it becomes second nature, unconsciously competent. So those are the
probably easier for the CMO to gauge their maturity if they are actually somewhat mature, because that will leave them in sort of the conscious stage. So I think it takes a very seasoned CMO to realize, now I may not feel like I am unconsciously incompetent, but I know from experience that that's where we are now, because we haven't been working for this so long.
100%. That is the key. If you haven't done it before,
Mhm.
It's safe to assume you're unconsciously incompetent.
Yeah. Okay. So the assumption about that is probably one of the most conscious things, best conscious things that you can do. Oh, suddenly
Exactly.
the loops. And how would a CMO use? I mean, it's very nice to hold a mirror up to your own organization and see what is happening here. But I've seen people using the maturity models to show that mirror to someone else. So either to get funding or to this maturity model says that we suck in these places, so I need more funding in order to fix these gaps that we apparently have. So I've seen some people use maturity models like that. Any other ideas of how would holding this mirror up to colleagues or to investors, or how would you use such an image?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I with the maturity model, you see you cannot automate what you haven't standardized, and you can
Yeah.
standardize what you haven't defined. So definitions start with your strategy. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? If you're not clear about that, how can you standardize the business critical processes? A business critical process is nothing else than the processes that one-on-one support the strategy.
Mm.
So you don't know what your business critical strategies are. So everything is equally important. And then from there, you start doing, all kinds of technology. So that is an important thing to realize and then look at yourself. So it happens that CMOs come to me and say, technology is not working. And then I
Yeah.
reverse engineer, because in our surveys, we always ask, what is your technology maturity, but also what is your process maturity and your
Yeah.
strategy. And
Yeah.
there's one golden rule. Your strategy maturity should be higher than your process, and your
Yeah.
process higher than your technology. If not, you get funny conversations, and that confusion.
You probably get
Yeah,
over-invested in technology easily.
there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. So it's sometimes an inconvenient truth where you send them back to the drawing board and say, use. And sometimes you hear these things like, people are lazy, they don't get it. Maybe your strategy isn't clear enough.
Yeah.
You should have simple strategies that people can understand with one-liners. If you
Yeah.
don't have that and it's a big document, I don't think people will get it. And there are these simple things, right? Ask 5 people, what is that main goal? That, big, hairy, audacious goal, North Star, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. What is that? If you hear 5 different things, you're in trouble. Then
Yeah.
on the process level, if you ask, for instance, what are our most important KPIs, or how do you define an SQL? And you hear 5 different things, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
How do you
Getting
want to automate that?
exactly. Yeah. And that's actually, I'm sort of glad you mentioned that, because this ambiguity around business critical terms, even, I mean, such as what is a sales qualified lead, or what is personalization even. So which is
Yes.
kind of the idea for the book. So getting things down on paper, saying, listen, you need as marketers to stop bickering among yourselves and
Yes.
realize that actually almost all marketing personalization is personalization. So stop pointing fingers at each other and saying that they're doing it wrong, but get down to doing it and creating the results instead. So these are the elements. This is what you can work with. These are the levers to pull to maximize profitability. That was a big part of the frustration that actually led me to start up the book that you eventually joined. So
Yeah.
as part of our initial talks around marketing maturity, you brought up the term productization of marketing, which
Yes.
is a term that I've been using nonstop ever since, and I'm really seeing that as a sort of a north star for how people should be evolving with their personalization or just their customer experience management in general, which often tends to be fairly personalized towards the end goal. Can you explain to the listeners what productization of marketing is?
Yes. Basically, it's trying to put your most important revenue driving journeys on autopilot. And now people go like, oh, you need automation for that to automate all your journeys. And that's a wrong assumption. That's an immature assumption. What we see is, don't boil the ocean. There are probably a handful of customer journeys that really matter. And you should know which one. You're the
Yeah.
marketer. So do
So
some.
where in the customer life cycle is there most money at stake for you and most, I don't know, emotions or decisions on the customer side?
100%. So what I see often in companies that they go like, yeah, we also need to expand in this area, that area, and you spend a lot of money. And they go like, but your core customer journeys are not in place. So they're not automated, they're not productized, so to speak. And a product is not necessarily something with a price tag you sell outside, but it's internal productization. What can you put on autopilot so you can repeat it? And again, it's not tons of customer journeys. It's a handful, and this takes a bit of courage, experience to say, listen, we only need this. There's a nice example to make it practical. Steve Jobs got fired from his own company, Apple, and returned. Right, the first thing he did, he said, okay, we have many different types of computers now selling, but there are only 4. And that is what I'm talking about. Only 4, and then reverse engineer the journeys. He said, very simply put, we have desktops, we have laptops, we have B2B and B2C. That's a quadrant. There you go. And then one product for each. And from there, we simplified and then reverse engineer the journey. When do people think about it? When do they buy it? Who's involved in the purchase? And try to be at those magic moments, try to be there. Not every touch point. So
moments of truth that we call it in the book. Yeah.
And that is a scary thing. I don't know what your experience is because you're the expert in personalization, but this is so counterintuitive. People go like, yeah, but I have to be everywhere at all time. But that's not marketing. That's stalking, you know?
Yeah. So I've seen a few good examples actually of productization, maybe also because I'm looking for it. And so often when I do keynotes on this, you've seen me tie the ribbon into a beautiful bow. So I say that this is the ribbon here, like a ribbon used for gift wrapping. And normally I hold that out and I say this is a customer life cycle from cradle to grave, from the customer doesn't know you until they don't want to know you anymore. Then I say there are all these moments of truth, or moments that matter. There are many names for that, but we call them moments of truth in the book.
Yes.
And I say that if the customer journey breaks in these places, and it probably already is broken, but where it overlaps, where there's most at stake for the customer and most at stake for your company in terms of revenue, either now or later. It could also be reputation or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then this is where you need to not only remove friction, but really excel with and surprise the customer positively with personalization, where they really feel heard and acknowledged and seen and given kind of a wow experience.
Yes.
And where there can be, I don't know, maybe 5 very, very crucial places along the customer journey here.
Yeah.
And basically, this is where you should start applying personalization, and not, for everybody all the time in all channels. So really doubling down on these exact places where there's most at stake, because there it's worth the effort to go above and beyond in terms of making something that's really, really, truly relevant for the customer. Because this is the moment that matters. So you need to throw everything you have at it. And what I've seen there is that sometimes some of the sort of places in the customer life cycle doesn't necessarily call for a lot of personalization. So because especially if you're in the beginning of a customer journey, it's a lot about for a brand to be top of mind, and to be to be there and to be present and to be like there with a very wide offering. So for instance, we're working with Minto.com, which is also actually a client of Agilix. So they're a fashion marketplace, online fashion marketplace. And it's very much, they don't have a lot of frequent buyers, so it's very much about getting the purchase in the top funnel and being top of mind. So what they actually did, so I'm coming back to the productization, is that they actually productized and fully automated a lot of their normal newsletter campaigns. So the campaigns, because they realized that a lot of their sort of flash sales campaigns and whatever, they were looking completely alike. So it's 20% discount off to everybody that weren't sort of in the very bottom funnel with the abandoned basket and the abandoned browsing tactics. But the whole middle funnel was unautomated, and that was really where the magic and the volume was. So they actually automated their newsletters. So it was like evergreen content that was it's currently now being shot out on a daily basis. It's fully automated. They've pre-produced a lot of campaigns. It's looking into what weekday is it, and then you get the Tuesday newsletter, regardless of which Tuesday it is. Obviously, they refresh this once in a while, but basically, it's fully automated, and it goes out to everybody that has, just a little bit of engagement, but aren't bottom funnel. And it goes out not with a 20% voucher, but a 15% voucher, and it converts like a miracle, much better than what they used to be doing. And it doesn't take them any resources. It's minimal, just refreshing the content. And they actually don't give out as much money in vouchers anymore, because these people have an intention. It doesn't matter for them whether it's 15 or 20. So that's one of the best examples I have of productized marketing. And then you think, okay, but that isn't personalization, Rasmus. But actually what this enables them to do is, because it's automated and because it's productized, it enables them to optimize this. So the boring newsletters that they used to do before, they didn't get personalized because it wasn't really worth the effort. But now, since it's actually the same email but with different content that goes out every single day, it's now actually worth making different versions of it. It's worth it to do the personalization. It's worth it to do like different parts of the assortment for people who are interested in different parts, women, men, and whatever. So actually now the personalization becomes possible and worth it because they've automated it. So it's sometimes you need to go cross over some bridge before you actually get to where the personalization kicks in. But this has tremendously impacted the amount of revenue they're getting from automated communications. And to my knowledge, it's one of the best examples of productization.
Yeah, so we spoke about courage and experience you need, to make this move. What was the reason for that? Because I told you I teach at business schools, and I've done like 30, 40 plans together with those. Those are people like 20 years in their job, and they do this always based on money. They see, hey, we can make a lot of money. They did their research, their data. So what happened here then?
Yeah, so money rules the world. So it was, I think it was a consciousness about them only automating very bottom funnel and doing super broad manual editorial campaigns on the top funnel, and the whole middle funnel was missing. So, and if you look like that, if you put the funnel down, so to speak, that's the customer journey. So from an understanding of the customer journey, they realized that there was a huge gap in the front, more towards the top funnel, that they weren't a moment that they weren't tapping into. So, and this is what I call tying the knot in the bow tie for those particular places, and that's what they did. And it's I didn't think they didn't expect it to work that well. But it's now they're nominated for all kinds of awards, and it isn't rocket science either, and that's the irony of it. It wasn't really hard to do for them.
Well, really the hard part is the courage, the balls to do it, and this is where the hacking starts. What they are doing is hacking. They're basically looking.
Maybe we should get back to that. So those were the three maturity levels initially from your work, and then we now adopted it into the the pyramid of personalization, the maturity model from the book. What is Hackpack Stack?
Well, your example I love, and this is what I learned also through the last 5 years of teaching at the business schools and working with these people closely. There's one thing, and it's quite embarrassing to admit, but if I ask marketers, who's your biggest client? Where do you make your money from? They don't know. Most don't know. And I always tell them, and if I meet you drunk in a bar, almost wasted, and I ask you the question, who's your client, you should be able to answer. Or in the middle of the night, you should answer like this. If you don't know that, you haven't done your homework, you haven't done your data crunching. Now, it's very bold and embarrassing to say this, but it all starts with that. And how, if you don't know, crunch your data and start hacking. So you hack your way, you try this, you try that. And if you look at it, all the campaigns we're doing are basically hacks, tests, experiments. And once you know it works, out of the 100 experiments, maybe one works. Hey, we're just defining startups here, right? Startups do the same. They do this all the time. They're growth hacking. So you figure it out as a marketer and you go like, oh, we have traction. Now this works. and then from there you can start hacking. So growth hacking means experimenting and find out if something works, like your middle funnel experiment. Now it works. Probably the whole personalization, technology, process are messy, because if you're hacking, you're not cleaning up your desk, you're not cleaning up your code, right? And that's okay. That's okay. And this is what IT often don't understand. We need one tool for everything. No, allow us to hack in a certain secure environment, and we don't bother you and don't waste your IT resources to build that in, because that's what you see. We have a big tool and we build it into the big tool. And then after 9 months of implementation, we found out, oh, that doesn't work. Let's start another 9 months. No, don't mess up the core stack. Look at your, secure environment where you hack. Once you've hacked, you clean up all your code. That's packing. You clean up all the code. You make it lean and mean. What can we leave out? That's the one question you need to ask yourself. What can we leave out? And it still works. It still converts. It still delights the client. Okay, that's the packing part. Now it's ready to put it into the stack. And that could be as a separate tool, a new tool, because it's unique capability, or you migrate all that stuff into your core stack platform. I don't care.
But it's a mix-up of, it's not tech only, it's the implementation as such, also with the manual processes, if there is any, or, I mean, the processes, whatever you need to do to make it swing.
And it's almost a mindset. So I work this way myself with my team. I have hackers. Oh boy, I should never ask them to pack. They will never pack. They will never clean up their desk. And it's actually torture if I would ask them. So I have other people that are maybe less creative and innovative, but they can clean up like no other. They know the rules. And this is, the pack stage is also where you work with templates and design rules. And you say, okay, we always have this code put in this way, and that is clean and it's performant and we know it's scalable. Okay, because growth hacking stuff isn't scalable. And all too often what we see is that we are stuck in the hacking phase, which is the ad hoc level 1 and 2 in maturity. And that's, and I'm not saying that level 1 is bad. It's necessary to get to level 3, 4, 5, but do your homework first. So that's more or less how the hack, pack, and stack work does. Stacking is more IT, I would say, or maybe the marketing ops with IT. Hacking is just, and their Martech is more enabling you rather than, assisting you rather than enabling you or taking it over. So I don't know if this helps.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so say that I am in an organization, and now I realize that the hack, pack, stack can refer to how you're building your value proposition as a startup, as you said, but also looking into the way that you are developing your marketing. So the whole productization of marketing. And maybe a word on that first, actually. So the way that I came to like productization of marketing is imagine in a way that that the marketing for the most important moments of truth in the customer lifecycle, those have been automated and optimized. So now it's on autopilot. It's running by itself, and it's supporting a crucial part in the customer journey for all clients and its customers, and it's doing that in a personalized way. So basically, that's driving a lot of revenue for you, and it's a part of the customer journey that everybody will experience, or at least when they get to that dire moment where it's important to do so. So in that way, the marketing actually becomes a part of your product offering, because it's an integrated part of the customer experience. And so the customer wouldn't sort of distinguish between, okay, is this the product or is this the service or whatever? It's an integrated part of the customer experience. It's actually part of the product that you're delivering, even though it is a physical part of it. So that's the way that I've been looking at it. But going through these, say that you're a marketer and you're working with the hack, pack, stack, and you are at the hack level, you are throwing shit against the wall and see what sticks, what works here, where do we have traction, what works, which campaign ideas, which content works, which insights are the most crucial ones to get revenue and to get traction. And then you want to go to the pack level. What are sort of are 3 good tips for a marketer that want to ascend from the hack level to the pack level? What could those be?
Well, most of the time, hand over to someone else.
Yeah.
Strange eyes, yeah, it's a different mindset. Strange eyes always help. That's normally what you see. So that's number one. Number two is really work closely with a pack person on what can you leave out.
Yeah.
What is the essence of this experience that we're productizing.
Yeah.
And maybe even write it down together.
Describe it.
And describe it. It can even happen that it bounces back to you as a hacker, and you go like, "Ooh, we're not quite there yet. We're making some revenue, but it's not fine. There's some content areas that I still don't know." I would say you're ready with hacking when you know three things. What is the best features we need, the best data points, KPIs, and the best content?
Yeah.
Those are always the things. And we speak a lot about data. We don't speak enough about content, the personalization part. And basically, personalization is both.
Yeah. No content, no personalization.
And I see we're big on data. And I go like, yeah, data tells me what the client wants. I haven't spoken back to him.
Yeah, then give it. Yeah.
So I need the content as well. And I love what your example from Minto and the mid funnel. You will find out, and the ribbon, I found out with the business school examples that there are normally 3 to 5 features, 3 to 5 data points, 3 to 5 content pieces, like an email piece, a LinkedIn ad, what have you. And that's it. That. And if you haven't gotten to that point, don't hand over to pack. If you know those, then you can hand over to packers, and they can take it from there and apply the design rules.
And great answer. And what if then I am at the pack level and I want to ascend into the stack level? What do I then do as the CMO? What should I sort of set in motion?
Actually, I think this is a motion that should happen, as a second nature in the company. That's what, as a CMO, you want to grow. This is a kind of almost a muscle you're training in your team. If you hand over to stack, this is where it becomes more, let's say, kind of technical on the one hand, because you're talking now to IT. Maybe it becomes mainstream stack rather than the periphery with your growth hacking tools. And what are the design principles there? Do we need a new tool for it? Because the security levels were okay, but not up to standard. Okay, that could be a reason to buy a new tool. Then you need to migrate users, migrate content, migrate the data. So that's the packing. We know the design rules, restrict it from all the noise. We know what data points, content, and features we need. Now, here you go, and put it into mainstream. We buy a new tool, or we add it to the existing one. Now, that is the technical part. There's one part that I see almost never happen, and it should. It's the business part. Make somebody responsible for that product on autopilot. Make that person responsible. That is the person who should be lying awake at night and go like, ooh, the market is changing slightly. There's some frictions in our autopilot.
It still works.
Yes. Does it still work? It's like car maintenance, every now and then you have to, go to the car wash and clean it up or fuel it up, that kind of stuff. Zero maintenance, but that doesn't mean zero attention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it can run by itself, but it needs to be oiled now and then, or adjusted, or
yes. And maybe, and this is the beauty, because now it's hack back stack, but the stackers can talk back to the hackers and go like, hey, I see a major shift or something. It's not performing as it did before. So I see the KPIs dropping, or the conversions, or the revenue. What can we do? And then that hacker goes like, oh, wow, yes, I can play around with that. Let's try this, experiment with that, personalize such and so, and give it a try. And now we find a new hook, a new angle.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for those insights, Frans. Always a pleasure discussing this with you. And for the listeners, you can of course read the full chapter. And so what we did in the book is that we boil it all down into the pyramid of personalization. And here we're talking about the back end of the pyramid. So really the organizational things you need to do in order to support any personalized customer experience. And sort of the three dimensions, the three sides of the backend would be governance, people and skills, and of course technology. So with three respective maturity levels, referring back to Hackpack and Stack, you can read more about that in the actual book. You can also download the model so you can actually see and use the pyramid of personalization, and obviously the bow tie as well. I'll put a link in the show notes. So I think that was about it that we had for the chapter as such, Frans. But there's a question still that I'm dying to ask you. So going back to Gen AI, I was actually wanting to do an update on the book with Gen AI in it, but I was pretty disappointed with the examples that I found out there. But maybe looking into the future, I simply didn't get a lot of feedback on case studies that actually did work and that were packed and tagged. But how do you see generative AI affect personalization in the future?
That's a good one. So we have spoken briefly about the data layer, which is collecting data about the customer. We're not talking to the customer. And I'm really big on a content layer, which is serving personalization. Yeah. So once you have your data, all that data is so well orchestrated, you can create a decision engine that spits out AI generated content on the fly, personalized. That I don't see. And that is, if you would ask me, the next, so you will have, just like ETL, reverse ETL, you will have kind of content ETL, reverse content ETL, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I've been working with clients, big clients that said, we want to spit out, we know videos, personalized videos convert, but we have so many touch points. It would mean that 7 times the human population we have to create, pre-produced. That doesn't work. With Gen AI, you can do this on the fly. So I think that's where it's headed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So really, it's solving the content creation problem to some extent. And what I'm hearing you say also, and we do touch upon this also in the book a bit, the content layer is, the same way that as you have a CDP, a customer data platform, you need the customer content platform somehow. So a centralized way of finding out, okay, so which call to action should we now put in front of Frans, or what is the next best experience from an sort of experience catalog that would then reside in the content layer or in the customer 100%. Content platform. Yeah. Yes. And I do see the but what are the challenges? Because I do see some challenges with this as well. And the whole thing about putting generated content as part of your autopilot or your pack, so to speak, to go back to that, I still see a big challenge for companies that want to carefully overlook any piece of content that goes out to a customer, because they are afraid of this like small email traffic accident where it's like the auto driving cars, right? The self-driving cars that we've almost had now for quite a long time. And really implementing this in for instance, your email marketing. Actually, Minto, they're doing this with their abandoned basket copy. So the copy for their abandoned basket is completely individualized based on whatever you leave in the basket, and also the profile data they have on the customer, which is pretty neat. But it's been intensively tested, and they've been putting handcuffs and limitations on the prompting to make sure that it doesn't go out of bounds. And it may still do. So can you live with depending on how sort of occupied you are with brand hygiene, can you tolerate a small email marketing traffic accident? Maybe it's just the equivalent of someone tripping on their bike, but you really don't want to see any huge sort of brand polluting stuff out there. What are the challenges, and how do you see those?
There are many, and I think we touched upon accidentally in our talk some of them. So the content layer on really content on autopilot is something for the future. If you ask me, and that was the question, Gen AI, I think it will lead to that and enable us to do so. But there's a lot of homework we have to do, because with Gen AI we're still at the beginning of the hype cycle. We think it solves everything. So for me, we're still going up. Yeah. And I saw recent research where people asked, okay, how are you applying Gen AI in your company, in marketing. And a few cases really were successful. So, and it's mostly drafting, briefing content, not producing it.
Exactly.
And that's okay. So I think we have to do content homework and what we said, business case homework. What does the client want? What do they need? What are the magic moments? And again and again, I cannot stress this enough. Technology will not tell you. You will have to figure it out. Just like with a self-driving car. Where do you want to go?
Exactly.
You still have to put in a destination. So that's the whole thing. So, and we don't know where we're going, not well enough. If you ask a marketer, what are your goals? I told you before, people often don't know.
Yeah. So if you don't know where to go, it's very unlikely that you'll get there. And it's very, very hard to make anything work for you and help you get there if you don't know. Let's leave that as the closing remark to that part. So I have one question left, which is a question I always ask my guests here in the podcast. What is your favorite personal example of personalization that you've experienced as a customer?
Yeah, I think this one is maybe even too obvious to mention. I think it's ChatGPT as an example.
Yeah.
It does so many things so well. First of all, you have the dialogue interface, which is brilliant. It's almost as brilliant as the LLM behind it.
Yeah.
Because it's really a conversation. And if you look at it, marketing in essence is a conversation. It's a dialogue. Yeah, it should be. And you should be guessing as a marketer, what is their next question?
Yeah.
And there's even a nice methodology behind it, which is called the dialogue method.
Like Siegfried Vögele.
Yes, Mr. Vögele. And he said, basically, people are having questions. And the first question is, what is it you want from me? And you have to answer that. And if you don't, you're out. Game over. And then it was a monologue. It wasn't a dialogue. So if you answer it and trying to figure out what that next best question or answer is just trying to figure out, talking to 5 people and you will know. Or just go to Google, write it down, and you see people also ask. And then use that. I mean, but with ChatGPT, they bake this in. So they are literally even better than humans every now and then, listening to what I'm saying. And not only the words, but also the intention behind it. And it's brilliant. So I think there's at the moment no better example for me, at least with personalization. It taps into what I really need to know. And you can even ask, okay, what else do I need to know? And it will tell you more stuff you forgot to ask about. So I don't know if that's a good example, but this is it for me.
Yeah. Because I think in general, it is hard. I mean, I'm working with it every day. So obviously I have some examples and I've asked a lot of people. Quite often they come up with experiences that they had in real life. So where people were personalizing the services to them because they recognized them from before and they realized what these people want. And it's not scalable necessarily, but it's still personalization. And what you're having there is actually scalable, but it comes back to a thing that we discussed also earlier. You need to know what you want. And at least, and if you don't want anything, you're probably not going to get it either. So
100%. And the beautiful thing about ChatGPT is it's very intimate. It's personal. So I can ask any stupid question and it will not laugh at me and it will just tell me what it is. And that, I think it's a very good way to get to the question you really want to ask. As you were saying. Yeah.
Maybe one day the ChatGPT will laugh at you because you're asking questions that are showing that you're going away from what the ChatGPT knows that you have said that you want to go and where you want to be and who you want to be. But
then it becomes a real partner. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining, Frans. It's been a huge pleasure. It always is. And I hope that the listeners enjoyed this as well. Remember, of course, that you can download an abstract of the book completely for free through the link in the show notes, and the models can be downloaded. And without any further ado, thank you for listening, and hope to see you next week for the next chapter that we'll be releasing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening in on this episode of Hello FirstName. Remember that all models and even a written abstract of the book are available for download. You'll find the link in the show notes. In our next episode, which is a classical audiobook chapter, we'll be listening to Chapter 19, People and Skills for Personalization. one thing is owning the Formula One race car, but really it takes a team to drive it and win races. Learn interesting perspectives on the different types of marketing technologists and how ways of working with personalization changes as maturity evolves.